Welcome to Fika's Focus. Voices leading change.
Samantha Lee Hansen. Nah, okay. Sammy,
Hey.
how are you?
Good. Thanks.
It's cool to have you on this Get to Know. I think obviously getting out the fill the gap in regards to what you do and the big piece you play in Future Focus, and us having a chance to storytell. It's nice to have you in the space to tell your own story.
Yeah, it's definitely a different experience being on this side of the camera.
Normally, Sammy is sitting down on the other side taking notes and in control of the production of this, but she said to me it's even quite weird editing her own video
Yep,
in
it
that
is.
space.
I'm all for it with somebody else, but I'm just leading the way. I got to get on it too.
So I appreciate you coming on. I think, as always, we always try to go back into people's backstories, but why don't you just tell us a little bit about the capital city of Foxton and where you're from and you're growing up there.
Okay. So we actually moved around quite a bit as kids. My dad's a police officer, so with his work, we were constantly moving. I think I figured out I lived in like 12 houses by the time I finally left home. I was actually born in Fielding. I lived in Fielding for a little while and then we moved to Bulls. Lived in a few places there. Mum and Dad Dad was in the police store and Mum was running a Subway with one of her good friends. So we spent a bit of time there picking up all the roll-ups from out the back and munching on those after school. And then, we moved to Foxton Beach when I was 9. Dad got the constable role out there. We were actually going to move to Wellington if we didn't get that role. But I think back on that now and I'm very grateful that Foxton was the final destination for us before I moved up here.
And so Dad being a cop and moving around, what was he doing? What was the moving? Was he just going to a different state? What was that about?
Just different positions within the police. Has him moving around. I think he was he enjoyed the small cop town of Bulls and working with the smaller communities, and then he did a bit of it in Palmerston North, and I think he just wanted to get back to the small town.
Where's Dad originally from, actually?
Dannyvirk.
Oh, Dannyvirk, yeah.
So his mum, my gran, she's still in Dannyvirk, and his sister is also in Dannyvirk. And Mum's actually from around there too.
Right. And then so we fast forward to you going into high school, doing quite well academically.
Yes, yeah. Also,
the Ducks.
Yeah, I was Ducks of Manawatu College.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you went off into university as well. And what did you study there? Sports.
Yeah, I studied sport and exercise science with a major in exercise prescription.
And then you found your way up this way. But let's go back into that kind of childhood, and because we're also lucky enough to have Ashley, your sister, as part of the team here. Yeah. So you're the youngest?
I am. I'm the youngest of 5.
Yep.
My oldest sister being 13 years older than me, so quite the gap. She's got 3 babies now. But yeah, I grew up being the punching bag of the siblings. I could tell many stories of that, but me and Ash are pretty close.
Yeah, it's quite cool to have you guys here as a connection in terms of that space, and obviously you've got a key role, but Ashley's got a key role as a centre chef and really driving a lot of our initiatives and that stuff with her team in the centre chef's role. So yeah, it's quite cool to have 2 of the Hansen girls involved.
Yeah, I didn't think we'd both end up back in the same place.
Yeah,
actually living together again for a while.
Yeah, and we might as well go back into what's you've been a real passion of yours is just sport and movement and things like that. So, obviously our relationship was established through weightlifting, but you've got quite a deep presence in sport, soccer. I think you're telling me initially, and then obviously meeting up with Shane and getting into CrossFit / weightlifting. Yeah. So the CrossFit space you did really well at.
Yeah, I started CrossFit when I was in year 10 at high school. Shane started after school, we called it fitness club because you couldn't use the word CrossFit in that. And I went for a little while, and Shane was like, "You're actually pretty good at this." And he's like, "Why don't you go try out training at one of the gyms in Palmy," which is like a 40-minute drive from Foxton. So I had to sort of convince my parents that it was worth the drive a couple of times a week, because obviously I couldn't get in my own car back then. But yes, I went and trained at CrossFit Mana for a while. Really got deep into the CrossFit. I did a couple international events, which were really awesome. But then, found weightlifting in 2016 and then started dabbling in both.
And you obviously had a pretty meteoric rise through there. I mean, I think I first met you at that Oceania's.
Yep,
Yeah.
2017.
Watching you come off the platform after spewing in your mouth.
Yeah.
I actually remember feeling sorry for you because your belt got right at the right at the competition. Your
I'd
belt
done
got,
my first clean and jerk, and then the the technical official came running after me, and she's like, "Your belt's illegal. You've got to."
That's right. You'd come off the platform, eh?
Yeah, and I had no idea that was even a thing. Like, I'd only been to one
Malaysia,
international before that, which was my second weightlifting event I'd ever done. And I was like, somebody needs to find me a belt, and that was an experience.
Yes, and you enjoyed quite a bit of success in those spaces too. I remember watching you have quite the battles with Piper and Samara in that space, I guess, as well. I remember your win at Nationals 2020.
That was an awesome event.
Yeah,
that's a pretty cool event.
Gibbo was coaching you in that space, and it became obviously a huge part of your life.
It was a very big part of my life. I think sport for me was a massive avenue of expression. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I think probably what stands out to me in your story is that once you're in, you go in 100.
Yeah.
I think considering that you've taken up a role with us that you had literally no experience nor training in.
Just figure it out.
I remember having the conversation with you saying, well, hang on, if you're the dust of the school, you must have some brilliance in your head. I think you've dived into it, right?
Yeah.
You tend to do that in life.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what's it been like in that space of navigation? What drives you in that space of knowing and understanding that, well, actually first acknowledging that you don't have any experience, but you're like, cool, I'll give it a go. What's that all down to?
I feel like I might as well bring this up. My mum got diagnosed with cancer when I was 9, stage 3 bowel cancer, and went through treatment for a few years. And so obviously that's tough on the whole family. And me being the youngest, I grew up pretty quickly through those times because it was just a rough few years. And I think in that time I learned how to manage myself pretty well, and then I get into the sport side of things and threw myself into that. And I think I figured out that through sport, like if you really want something, like you just have to go out and seek to understand, learn. Like even my coach Shane, he didn't know anything about the sport then, so he was a good role model in that. Again, if you want to learn, you want to do good at something, you just have to put your head down and work, figure it out as you go.
And let's go back to Mum's diagnosis in that space, and there is a lot of the desire to move yourself forward by yourself, and that taught you some valuable lessons. What are some of those lessons there in terms of deep diving into areas? What did that period of your life teach you?
I think it just really taught me that you have to be your own biggest supporter. Like you have to learn how to trust yourself and believe in yourself, because there's not always going to be somebody there patting you on the back the whole way. And I don't believe that you should need that. Like if you're really passionate about something or love something, then you should be able to dig in and do that by yourself.
Do you think that? But you've got quite a knack for storytelling.
Yeah, I think I could talk about my English teacher,
Yeah,
Mr.
cool.
Allen.
Oh, Mr. Allen. Kia ora, Mr. Allen.
Yeah, so I hated English. I hated it in primary school. I hated it in year 9, but then in year 10, our class were lucky enough to have Mr. Allen, and usually you only have the same teacher for a year, but we were lucky enough to have him for 2 years, our year 10 and 11 year, and he just found a way of making English fun for everyone. Like, he... like you go through high school and there's all the NZCA standards and all these things, but he'd always just tailor it towards you somehow. And he just made the class fun. Like, he always came dressed in a suit, and he had a million different coloured Converses that he would come with a new pair every day, and he was just so bright and chirpy, and he carried that through the lessons and made that fun. So I think I really learnt how to write and really dig into backgrounds of stories through that, because he recognised that was something I was good at.
Because you've generated a lot of content for not only us, obviously, but for yourself and your own journey and your social media presence. Like the ability to hold audience with a story is quite a very powerful skill, right? What drives that? What's your thought process when you're thinking about telling the story? How are you adding evidence to your story?
I think it just really comes down to that I am an empath, and I tend to really feel what other people are feeling, and I think that makes the storytelling a bit easier for me, because I can see like the stuff that's actually behind it all, not just what's sitting on the surface level.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. How do you know a sequence of a story that you're telling as it unfolds in front of your eyes? So you know to film, you know to engage, you know to get down on the floor and film and all those sorts of things. How do you know that?
I think, again, just because I have always been an observer. Like, I'm pretty good at reading the room. And I guess for me, like, my eyes and mine tends to drift towards the quieter corner, and I feel like that's usually where like the real magic is happening, especially in the ECE space. Like, we know that rooms can get busy and chaotic throughout the day because there's a lot of emotions flying around with preschoolers and babies and whatnot, and so I've just always drifted to the quieter corner where I can sit down and just slow down and really take in what's being said, and just sort of build it from there.
So slowing down, that's quite funny hearing that from you.
I know.
Slowing down.
It's something I've only learnt recently.
But you've made some big choices in your life in the last year in particular. But what does slowing down mean as of today?
Just living by the moment.
Yep.
Living day by day. I think being an athlete, I was always looking to what's next. I was always looking to my next training session or the next event, the food I had to eat tomorrow. Like, I was always looking at what I needed to do to get to the next stage. So I think now, having removed myself from that high-level sporting, it's allowed me to just take life in, because I was living at such a fast pace, like always busy, always scheduling things around training, and removing that, has allowed me to really just stop and breathe and enjoy the little things that I didn't get to enjoy being an athlete.
Yeah, it's been quite an adjustment.
Yeah.
It's been quite an adjustment for you. And
it was a massive part of my life.
Yeah.
It's like a third of my whole life.
It was defining, right?
Yep, it was.
Yeah, it was a defining part of your life.
I would have disagreed with you had I still been in the thick of sport right now. But looking back at it now, like, I did define myself with sport. I would have disputed that back then, because I was absolutely in denial of that, but I was.
So how do we define you? Who do you define as today?
Oh, I don't know. I'm working on that. I'm working on figuring that out.
Oh, what about your why?
Yep, I'm working on figuring that out too.
It's been an interesting journey for you. Why?
Yep.
Why? Why is that an interesting journey? I know we've been lucky. There's a group of us that have seen you obviously grow in this space, but why is finding your why an interesting journey for you?
Because I've always put other people before me. Always. Like, I've always thought about what another person needs to help make them happy and put that ahead of myself. So now, not being forced to, but being encouraged to dig into my own self and why I do things, it's challenging for me.
And in that space of, understanding that now you've got to place yourself as first, what doors have opened in that space for you?
I think just being more content with myself. Not feeling like I'm constantly fighting to... I just feel more content.
It's actually quite funny because this morning I woke up and jumped out of bed pretty sprightly, and I was like, realised I didn't have sore feet, ankles, knees, hips.
You know what? That is actually a really great feeling.
It was actually so funny. I actually, because I remember for about a year, I had like this foot injury, and I don't know what I'd done, but I had a foot injury, and I literally have to get out of bed and like get my foot moving, like trying to charge up an old lawnmower just to get my foot moving because there was something wrong with it. And I realised this morning when I got out of bed, I was like, oh man, that foot injury's gone. So yeah, it's again, don't have to wake up feeling sore all the time.
Constant little niggles, always constantly. Yeah.
So in terms of your degree, what was the hope there? What were you, obviously sport has been a passion and you dived into that space, but what was the hope? What were you trying to, or what were you setting yourself up to do?
To be completely honest, I went in very blind. I got to the end of high school and I was like, I don't know what I want to do. Like even at high school, I essentially for the whole year 13, I had independent lines all day.
Yes.
And I sat in the PE office and I did all the work I had to do for university entrance, and then I'd train, eat, come back into the office, and I just looked after myself.
So like Hermione Granger, but you just didn't have the thing to go back in time. Yeah.
Pretty much.
So you're like Fox and Hermione Granger.
You're an egg. Yeah, and then so I got to the end of school and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I just assumed that because I liked sport that I would enjoy studying it and I would enjoy teaching it. And I realised very quickly as I got to university, I absolutely hated it. I hated every day of doing that degree. Like, I'm not even joking when I say I cried every day. But I still did it because it allowed me to... I actually got a sport academy scholarship at Massey for...
Was that a blue... What's it called?
No, so that's separate. It was just called in my first year, it was a sport academy. So you go to Massey and they support you with your fees. It was a $5,000 scholarship, and but you had to do well in your papers to keep the scholarship. That continuously renew you, but you got access to training facilities. Not that I could use them because you walk into the Massey gym and you're not allowed to drop free weights. So that was no benefit to me, but the money allowed me to compete internationally, because otherwise I would have had no way of funding that on top of all the fundraising we did. And then in my second and third year, I was able to apply for the sports bursary, which was similar. But again, you had to reapply, and it got harder and harder each year to get it, and I managed to get it both years.
Why did you persist, though? Why did you stick? If you hated it and you're crying, why did you persist?
Because I didn't like to quit. I felt like if I didn't do it, that I was failing. That was my mindset back then.
And then we fast forward and you're halfway through a postgraduate degree in ECE and you quit.
Yeah.
Some big growth.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I was driving to placement. I was only a couple of papers away from finishing my postgrad, and I was driving to placement one day and I'd been reading a book by Tim Grover, actually. Winning. Yeah. And I just burst into tears and I was like, what am I doing? I was like, I don't want to do this. I was like, this is not what I want to do. I love children. Like, I was nannying before that and got into ECE through just knowing you guys, and I needed work, and when I moved up here, and I did enjoy most parts of it, but I just knew that this wasn't the career for me. again, love children, but I don't love being in a room of 30 of them for 8 hours a day. Just didn't spark my fire anymore. And so I was just like, you know what? I'm just not going to do it. I'll figure it out. Yeah.
And interesting for the crazy thing is that time that you had in ECE has actually enabled you to become actually super great at what you do now.
Yeah.
Because you actually know what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, and I suppose that's another thing that makes the storytelling a little bit easier for me, is that I have experienced what it's like to be a teacher on the floor and be in there every day.
Well, you have a genuine care for kids. I mean, that's very clear. I think you've managed to build relationships with so many kids around all our centres. You know, they all know you. And so it's not that you don't love kids and kids don't love you. It's just that was the career thing you chose.
I just...
Interesting in that space, though. You know, I know we've spoken about other goals around the marketing company and all that sort of stuff, but I think... Do you carry doubt about some of the stuff you do through the day and through where you want to head now? Is there, because you've lost the consistency of sport?
There's definitely areas where I do carry doubt. Like I wonder, I'm like, is this actually what people want to see? But again, that's why we have continuous conversations about what it is that's going on and what people are hoping to see through our social media and all that kind of stuff. But I think, again, like the sporting has taught me to be able to just adapt on the fly. Like our sport was very demanding and you had to be able to just adapt as you go. And so I think every day I'm learning in the social media space.
What are some of the lessons of the social media engagement space you've learnt that have been quite hard?
I think probably one of the biggest ones is at first people aren't very keen to be in front of a camera, and so I've had to work really hard in building relationships with our teams to really like let them know that, you know, like we're not just in here to advertise. Like it is advertising because it's a business and you have to do that to get people through the doors. But like I'm here to tell your stories, like I'm here to support you as a teacher, and I'm here to show all these kids' parents like what they're actually getting up to throughout the day, because we all know that they'd rather be at home with their kids. They wouldn't want to, you know, if they had the choice to keep their kids home with them, they would. But if we can show them that their kids are having a blast throughout the day, then that's what I want to do. And so, yeah, I think just building those relationships has been the hardest part, but I think we're definitely getting there.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we've had to break away from that word marketing, and it's taken a lot of work. I mean, you and I and Courtney and the Leadership Council, we are really committed to storytelling, I think, and telling stories about the great work that, not obviously of our teachers, but that probably goes on within the sector. It's allowed us to really debunk a lot of myths, right?
Oh, 100%. Because there is still a massive stigma around childcare, early childcare being just a babysitting service.
And we dispute those words, even daycare, childcare, those words, because it carries a connotation that there's no level of education involved.
Yeah.
And you're lucky in that sense. You get to go in and witness that all the time.
Yeah, I do.
Been some beautiful moments recently. Tell us about some of the... Well, you went with me on that Sikh
that was amazing.
Temple.
That was so cool.
Yeah, I mean, that was a pretty cool little excursion.
That's definitely my top.
Yeah, that's been one of the top experiences, that one. Just talk to us about what you were thinking about when capturing that.
Oh, there were so many things going through my head. There always is. Like, I want to be able to capture all of it, but obviously there's only so much that you can. But the biggest part for me was, in my mind, like I wanted to somehow capture the pride that Armin, one of our kaiako, felt, and Tantana, one of the little girls, like that's her family's temple. Forgive me if that's not the terms that they use, but I just wanted to somehow capture like how proud they were to take their friends there and show them and teach them about their culture, and just like the experiences that we're able to give some of these kids. Like not many of them would ever walk into a Sikh temple otherwise. So just just showing the experiences that they're getting.
And I think the raw emotion that we see on those videos that you manage to capture, like I think of Tantaran in that video, you know, with her dad, and you know, I just remember, and I've spoken about this before, but her absolute desire to share her place of belonging to her friends and to us. You know, it was quite a raw feeling, and I was so proud that we could actually capture that, because it was a pretty beautiful scenario that we actually got to bridge a gap that often wouldn't be bridged. You know, and I'm really proud of that sort of stuff there. What about even your excursion down? You just captured with the boulevard going down to the beach. Yeah, far out. That looked beautiful.
Oh, it was amazing. Like, not only the weather, like the weather certainly helps, but so Holly is one of our kaiako down there, and she's on a bit of a journey right now with her practicum in her studies, and so she's probably been the most standout to me lately in terms of storytelling. Like, she started with the story of the 3 whales.
The Papa myth,
Yep, and so she started off just by setting up this really awesome provocation, and she was out there with the kids while they were playing with the whales and the water in there and telling them the story and asking them questions about it. And then the next week they listened to an audiobook that she recorded for them, and they're all lying on the floor like zenned out about it. And then the beach was sort of like the next step to that. And so they actually, for lack of a better word, trained the kids to be able to walk that far to the beach, because it's about a 30-minute walk for them at their pace from the centre, but they went on excursions over time to get them ready for that. And they got down there and they were collecting shells for their provocations, and we saw a seal down there, we were pretty lucky to see that, and everyone was just captivated by it. Like, it was just really awesome. Like, you can see the curiosity and the wonderment like in their eyes when they're looking at it, and their little brains ticking over. And
well, I saw Tarure's I could see his brain ticking over in pieces. How do you know where to focus though in that space? Because some of your imagery, some of your angles, spaces, they're very deliberate.
Yeah, they are. Like in that moment, we got down to the beach and they're like, oh my gosh, there's a seal down there. And I was like, wicked, like, let's go over there. And so my initial first thought, I get there and I show where we are, like what we're doing. But then when they were down with their kaiako looking at the seal, I zoom in on their face, because I want people to be able to see like what they're experiencing. And again, that's the empathy. Like, I want them to be able to feel it.
There's even the shot with Mila on Rosie.
Yeah, just that interaction there between them. Like, Rosie carried Mila the whole way from the centre because she did not want to get in the pushchair. She did not want to walk. And she's like, all right, guess it's me and you. And they were just like locking eyes and big smile on her face. And so just really, that's all I'm thinking about, just capturing the emotion.
Where do you think we need to head in this space? What's going to allow us to continue to support the sector with the stories? Where do we need to head to make sure that our engagement stays front and centre in terms of us promoting ECE?
I think, just really diving into the stories of our people. I think when people know where somebody has come from, or know, somebody's aspiration, like for their child or for just ECE in general, or just their life, their own personal life, like, it allows somebody to feel more connected to the process and the story. And I just think getting to know our people is what's going to keep people connected.
And how do we achieve that as we grow? How do we continue to stay present?
Always asking why, figuring people out.
It's a hard ask, but I know it's a task we're up to. I know as an organisation that is a task we are up to. I know that is what stays forefront. And if we don't keep capturing those stories, then essentially in 2023 and beyond, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I think that's what media and engagement has done. I think it's added another layer of validity to any cause that enables or entrusts us with people's most precious belongings, which is their children.
Yeah.
We are adding layers to the mana of our sector, and how you capture that, you particular, Sammy, how you capture that is you're worth your weight in gold in that sense.
Yeah, I'm not very good at taking compliments because I'm very harsh on myself. Like I produce a video or whatever, I'm like, man, like I'm constantly thinking about how I can make it better. But you know, we've talked about this before. Like you got to get it out, and the better will come after. I mean, you look at the first podcast that we ever recorded. Look at this one now. I remember being so terrified. I was like, oh my god, this is terrible. Content was great, like what you guys were talking about.
Tally ho, like it's just.
Yeah, well, you're not the one putting it out. You're not the one sitting
there.
But I'm in it. You are in it. Yeah, but no, I just think I'm just constantly looking for ways to make it better.
I think as this product continues to polish up, and because I also know you believe in our kaupapa of just not being just for future focus.
Yeah.
You know, I think we've been very clear about the purpose behind it. We are not going to facilitate any conversation about us just being babysitters. We are not going to facilitate any level of conversation that diminishes our presence as educators versus other educational sectors. But if we don't showcase what we're doing, then we may as well just fall in behind.
Yeah, like I think again that's where I'm grateful for the experience. You know, it was only a short time, about a year, working in the rooms, but having that experience and, you know, sometimes not having the greatest interactions with parents who come through the door. Like I had a scenario once where a parent's like, oh, it must be so good. Like you just get to sit here and play all day and you don't even have to use your brain. I sat there and I had to, you know, like, well, no, like we're here. We've got 16 little babies that we're here and we've got the best intentions for, like we're learning about them. We're, you know, like we're not here to
taking action.
Yeah. But yeah, so just fighting for that, knowing what that feels like when you put so much effort into your days with those kids, like, yeah, just wanting to showcase that and let teachers know that they're appreciated.
So just to finish off, just to close the circle, can you give us an experience with a child or within Future Focus that stands out as being really memorable for you?
I think for me, the first thing that does come to my mind is a particular child who started in the room just as I was starting at the batch, and I very quickly formed a pretty close bond with that child. He was, I guess, you know, we talk about primary caregiving, that sort of just naturally fell into that role without it even being labelled that. And I think over time, like I watched him grow up and then eventually he's moved on now, but just being able to have such a big impact in a child's day and have them come in happy and content with being there and content with their parents leaving and them coming to you, like you know that you're doing a good job and you're making a difference.
Yeah, it's always pretty cool when kids run up to you, they hug you, they, you know, fist bump, high five, when they'll come in and cuddle and seek, seek out your attention. I think it's a pretty special thing that we get to do.
Yeah,
and where you and I are lucky and grateful is we get around every centre and go and see all the kids.
That's the best part of my job. Like I think now, you know, obviously Livingston's just open, but I've only been open, 4 weeks? Already, all the kids here know who I am and they always come up and say hi and they want to touch the camera and all this stuff and, you know, experiences that we've had in the past with marketing. It wasn't like that. No. It wasn't. And I was in the rooms when that was going down and it was not it was not fun.
Yes.
Whereas I do my best to make it fun and actually involve myself in there with the kids. But yeah, I walk into the centres and they all know who I am, come running up to me. And I made that a goal of mine, is for everyone to know who I am.
Well, we've done that. Initially we spoke about PRT, personal, relevant, timely. That was our real driver for creating engagement opportunity. That the stuff is personal, meaning that it's personal to each centre, because we didn't want to just do across the centres.
Yep.
We wanted it to be relevant. Actually, I know that teacher, I know that child. My children play with with those children. It's on that day, because those. That was important to us, and actually timely. You didn't want to see a post of your child from 3 weeks ago when they were wearing the Incredible Hulk shirt. That was incredibly. It just wasn't intimate.
Yeah.
And you've really stuck to that principle of PRT. I think. Which is something that just dropped out of my head one day. But that's been a major key to your success, has been that PRT principle. So, Sammy, we love what you do. I think you're a critical part to our Leadership Council, because you're across all the centres. I know sometimes you struggle to see your value in that space, but I know everyone else does. I know there's exciting things coming for us further in this space around engagement and all that, but we really appreciate your mahi.
Wait, so...
Let's start again.
Oh, God.
What day's Mother's Day? Just because you're a dongi.